Up next on U.S. Bank Business Watch, presented by the business Courier. Cyberspace in the office is a big issue. Could your habits get you fired? Expanding a local restaurant empire beyond the tri-state. And a celebrity chef comes to town to polish and promote the Pavilion in Mount Adams. U.S. Bank Business Watch is next. Happy Easter. Welcome to U.S. Bank Business Watch. I'm Peg Rusconi. On the Business Courier front page centerpiece this week is the place where you work suffering from NSFW, not suitable for work. NSFW is the scarlet letter of the internet and a tag that causes HR people to either panic or roll their eyes. With just about every employee on social media, employers don't want online activity reflecting poorly on the company. It's an issue experts say companies cannot ignore. The definitions of not suitable for work are as varied as the internet itself. Nudity, gambling, racism, insensitivity. Experts say it is critical that companies have a policy that defines what is and isn't inappropriate to view on the internet. There also needs to be a reporting mechanism and a protocol to investigate any reports of behavior that violates that policy. It should be tied to other policies that prohibit workplace harassment. Another tool employers have is software that can block access to websites that fall under NSFW categories or communications containing NSFW language. Now, this is a fascinating story from Business Courier reporter Andy Brownfield. Andy joins Business Courier publisher Jamie Smith in the studio with more. Gentlemen.
Thanks, Peg. Andy, thanks for being here today. So is NSFW a real term that HR firms are using?
Well, NSFW, or Not Safe for Work, was born when the internet was young and it was still kind of a Wild West. People would send each other things they found over email, and sometimes they're opening these things at work. And a lot of the things on the internet might not be the most appropriate to view at work. So this tag was created, much like the reply or forward tags in emails, to warn people that they probably shouldn't open it at work.
Okay. Well, obviously, as publisher of the Courier, and running the business, it's fascinating to me to kind of read this story. I went through, after I read your story, I went through our HR policies, our internet policies, our technology policies, and there's obviously a lot of information there, but it's not really that clear. What have you found out talking to some of the attorneys that you talked to?
Well, experts say it doesn't have to be specifically clear, a laundry list of things that you can't look at, but it's good to have some general guidelines, like all pornographic material is prohibited, gambling is prohibited, illegal activity obviously would be prohibited. But it's good to tie them into your harassment policies too, so people aren't viewing material that could cause someone of an ethnic or gender to feel that they're in a hostile work environment.
Yeah. Well, so you gave some of the examples of people that did lose their jobs because of this. In our environment, because of Twitter and Facebook, and we require you guys to be on there to tweet out some of the stories and post some of our stories on Facebook. How hard does that make it for companies? Because once you're on there, it obviously gives you the total freedom.
Well, companies can take one of two approaches. They can either do a scorched earth approach, where they just allow nothing that's unrelated to work, or they can do what we do, which is have a more permissive policy. By telling employees that they have no expectation of privacy and that anything they view online can and might be monitored, you are eliminating that defense in court that they had some kind of expectation of privacy. And you're also letting them know that they should be on their toes and watch what they're posting.
Well, it's a fascinating story. Thanks for digging deep into it, and readers need to read the rest of it in the story. Thanks for being here today. Peg, back to you.
All right, lots to think about there. Thanks, Jamie and Andy. A week after General Electric announced it would bring 1,400 jobs and its global operations center to Cincinnati, there are rumors that CEO Jeff Immelt could be leaving the company sooner than originally expected. Immelt was raised in Greater Cincinnati and has been GE CEO since 2001. Word is he was originally expected to stay in the job for 20 years, but the company's directors are increasingly expecting him to step down before 2021. Realizing it may be too taxing for one person to lead the $258 billion company for 2 decades. For the latest on the GE jobs, be sure to take a look at the Business Courier's online and print editions. Reporter Chris Wetterick is all over this story. There's a Q&A with Joe Allen, who will run the new Cincinnati-based center, and a look at the 3 local communities vying to call the new center home. Also, news on an agreement between the Cincinnati Bengals and Hamilton County that could open the door for the GE site to be located on the banks. Well, there's a new bank in Cincinnati, in the Cincinnati market. Greensburg, Indiana-based Main Source is buying West Harrison-based MBT, the parent of Merchants and Bank and Trust Company.
We have 5 commercial bankers that are really working in and around the Cincinnati area. So buying Merchants allowed us the opportunity to go ahead and accelerate growth plans into Greater Cincinnati.
Prior to the acquisition, Main Source didn't have any local branches. Now it has 6. Merchants branches will become Main Source branches probably by the end of the 3rd quarter. No locations will close, according to Brown, and employees are expected to keep their jobs. If you're thinking about big investment gains, it's best to go small. At least that's the theory of Mike Simon, president of Fort Mitchell-based Alpha Mark Advisors, who has seized the lead after first quarter in the Business Courier's annual stock picking contest. Simon manages Alpha Mark's small cap growth fund and chose all small cap stocks among 5 stocks to perform the best during 2014.
Our investment philosophy is grounded by an appreciation of risk. All the companies that we buy for our portfolios have strong balance sheets, growing cash flows, and positive earnings momentum.
Simon's portfolio is up 16%, easily topping the next closest contestant. Well, 2 years ago, local restaurateur Jeff Ruby expanded his executive team, and that move seems to be paying huge dividends. Ruby reportedly increased sales by more than $1.5 million compared with 2012 and is on pace to have the same growth this year. Part of the reason may be a change in management focus.
And really talked about building our corporate team. From each department, we wanted to have experts. And we always kind of had, in the past, people who did a little bit of everything, and what we found was by having somebody that has to do is spread too thin, they're not going to be able to focus on exactly what they're good at. And so by putting somebody in a department that's an expert and they focus on just that department, whether it's sales, marketing, training, HR, finance, it lets all of us from a corporate level really hone in on what's important.
The ultimate goal is to grow and expand the Jeff Ruby reach.
It goes from 513, 859, the tri-state, to a national stage. We think we have, well, we know we have something very special. We offer a very unique dining experience that encompasses food, service, entertainment, the whole package. And I think we genuinely can compete on a national stage, and we're very excited to show the country what we're about.
Jeff Ruby will open a new restaurant in Lexington in 2015 and is looking at opportunities in Nashville and Columbus in the coming years. The Pavilion in Mount Adams is getting a boost from some celebrity chef power. Chef Brian Duffy, who has appeared on the Food Network and other national programs, served as a culinary consultant for 4 EG restaurants, including the Pavilion. Duffy developed what the restaurant calls new Celtic cuisine that puts a twist on traditional favorites. But those aren't the only changes being made.
Along with the relaunch of the new menu, one of the big things we're doing here is a complete remodel of the 2 rooms inside, the upstairs and the downstairs. And so we're really excited about that to go along with the menu.
Duffy was consulted for the menu at 4EG's sister location, Keystone Bar and Grill, and the group called him again to do the work at the Pavilion. The founder of one of the largest locally and minority-owned firms grew up in India and has been on a very interesting career path. Ramesh Malhotra is chairman and CEO of Malhotra Group, which includes 5 diversified operating units representing commodity trading, retail and wholesale, real estate, intellectual properties, and core business services. His career path started with the U.S. Geological Survey.
When I finished my school, I wanted to be a Fortune 500 company's president or something. And then I reached that level, and then I found out it was like monkey climbing the pole. And the more higher you go, the more people want to shoot at you.
Well, the rest is history for Malhotra, who started his own business and continues to make it successful. All right, if you have a sweet tooth but are trying to watch your weight, you may want to brush your teeth. P&G's new Crest B fluoride toothpaste flavors are out. They include Vanilla Mint Spark, Chocolate Mint Trek, and Lime Spearmint Zest. The 4.5-ounce tubes are available for $5.99 through the P&G e-store, but consumers might find lower prices at big box retailers. Sounds yummy, but I still want my Easter candy. Well, up next on U.S. Bank Business Watch, an update on funding a long-awaited bike trail. And a new pizza place coming downtown. Some news you may have missed if you're not reading the Business Courier online every day or following on Twitter and Facebook. Cincinnati City Council approved several bike-related ordinances last week, including an application for a grant to design the proposed Wasson Way bike trail on Cincinnati's east side. Council approved asking for up to $1.6 million from the federal Tiger program, which funds all modes of transportation. If the city is awarded the grant, it would fund design, cost-benefit analysis, and environmental work, but not construction of the 6.5-mile mixed-use trail, which would run from Xavier University to Marymount. Owners of a new business opening in downtown Cincinnati here at the 580 building say they chose their location based on the new streetcar line. Pie Pizzeria is the 6th location for the chain, but only the 2nd outside St. Louis. Renovations are underway in the building now. The restaurant will be the first in Ohio to feature St. Louis's largest local brewer, Schlafly. Rebecca Porterfield is the new dean for the Hale U.S. Bank College of Business at Northern Kentucky University. President Jeffrey Mearns made the appointment this week. Porterfield will join the university July 1st. She's currently the graduate associate dean of the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. Shareholders at large companies are much more active in monitoring the ways companies conduct day-to-day business. Recent activities suggest they are influencing business practices and other things like the use of corporate cash. The practice is called shareholder activism, and it has its supporters and its critics. For perspective on this topic, our very own Jim Russell, U.S. Bank's senior equity strategist, is joined by U.S. Bank portfolio manager Nolan Kamer in this morning's Economic 360. Gentlemen.
Thank you, Peg. We're very pleased to have Nolan Kamer with us on the show today. He's going to talk to us a little bit about shareholder activism. Nolan does great work for our clients at U.S. Bank Wealth Management. So shareholder activism, that's something that we're hearing a little bit more in the local and national media. How is this defined exactly, and what is it that these activists do in order to gain a little bit of influence with the companies to push their agenda?
Sure. So shareholder activism is basically an institution such as a hedge fund or an individual who purchases shares in a company with the intent of increasing shareholder return and influencing change amongst management. Now, typically they buy about a 5% share in the company's stock, and they take those voting rights and try to obtain a seat on the board of directors, which allows them to more easily influence change in the company.
So have a seat at the table, maybe influence some of the company decisions then.
Exactly.
Is that right? So is this kind of activity maybe growing in popularity, and, you know, does it appear that it impacts you and I, shareholders, in that it influences the market prices of the companies that they tend to speak to?
So it absolutely is gaining in popularity. In fact, you've probably seen more headlines in the news, as well as activists such as Carl Icahn or Bill Ackman on CNBC more often now. And this can all be attributed to kind of one word, and that's cash. Activists, hedge funds have increased cash balances by 50% over the last year to $90 billion. And then companies have had increasing cash balances where activists see that and think they have an opportunity to come in, maybe get the company to increase share buyback or dividends, which goes right to shareholders. And then lastly, companies have been more willing to make changes when activists get involved. In fact, in the last year, there are 10 separate occasions where companies sold off pieces of the business or broke the company up directly because of shareholder activists.
So they are making a difference.
Absolutely.
Right? Maybe a couple of ideas come to the table that are pretty good on occasion. And so that really leads us into then maybe another question, and that is, probably there's some positive and negative aspects to this. Concede that maybe some good ideas are brought to the table, and perhaps even it would be viewed as a distraction on occasion. Are there some positives and negatives here?
Absolutely. So from a positive standpoint, they can bring new ideas to management. Sometimes management is so focused on their long-term strategy that they miss opportunities in the short term to enhance returns.
Right.
And also, the results have spoken for themselves. So 48% return over a 6-month period on average when activists get involved.
That's quite a bit.
So it's a good return and outpaces the S&P. Now, on the negative side, there are some things that worry people.
Okay.
It can be a distraction to management. They have the long-term strategy. It might be a great one in place, and management has to be pulled away from the day-to-day activity because of activists. And then in addition to that, activists tend to have a short time horizon. They get in, they make the changes, and then they get out of the stock, where you and I might be more long-term investors, and these short-term changes could influence long-term profitability of companies.
Understand. So a bit of a balance, just like many things in life, right?
Absolutely.
Well, Nolan, thank you very much for visiting with us today. Sure, we'll have you back. Great topic today. Peg, back to you.
All right, thanks, Jim and Nolan. Still to come on U.S. Bank Business Watch, on this Easter Sunday, we'll take you inside a beautiful Cincinnati landmark. Spring Grove Cemetery historian Phil Nuxhall is with us in the studio to talk about his new book on this local treasure. And congratulations to Sarah Corlett, Director of Community Development and Strategy for Design Impact, another of our 40 Under 40 honorees. In this morning's Business Insight, many people may spend this Easter Sunday visiting Spring Grove Cemetery. Now, that may seem unusual to some, but Cincinnati's beautiful and historic cemetery is not just a final resting place. It is a destination for the living, filled with elegance and history. In 2001, Phil Nuxhall became Spring Grove's very first historian, following a successful career as a speech and language pathologist. In 2010, he was given a Second Act Award from the Business Courier for his career transition. Along the way, he also became an author, and his second book, Stories in the Grove, has just been published. Phil Nuxhall joins his BFF, Business Watch producer Kelly Leon, in the studio. Guys.
Thank you, Peg. Yes, full disclosure, Phil and I are very good friends, and I'm very excited for you to be here on the Business Watch program.
Me too.
Let's start with Spring Grove, because Spring Grove is like Fountain Square, Finley Market, Music Hall, Union Terminal. It is a destination place in Cincinnati.
It really is, and most people don't think of it as a destination. They don't think of it in the same terms as Union Terminal, Fountain Square, but it really is because of the history, because of the significance of it being the first cemetery in America that got rid of all of the lot fencing and made the cemetery as much of a beautiful park as a cemetery. That whole movement started in Spring Grove.
So you went there in 2001, kind of transformed your life. You became, and I'm surprised that you're the first historian, because this is such an historic place. Tell me how that came to be with you, that you recreated yourself.
Well, I think I was more surprised than anybody. I started walking in Spring Grove. That was my first experience. I didn't know anything about Spring Grove. I thought that's a strange place to walk. But it was suggested to me that, if you like walking, go to Spring Grove. So when I started walking, that's when I became familiar with the names, the beautiful architecture. Of course, it's a nationally or an officially sanctioned arboretum, so you've got the beautiful trees and flowers and, just on and on and on. And when I finished a volunteer sculpture inventory project with about 40 other people, I was hooked, and I wanted to continue doing something in some way at Spring Grove. And that's when I went into the office one day and I asked to speak to their historian, and I learned that there was no historian.
Wow.
And this is the second largest cemetery in the United States.
Wow.
I think, the most magnificent history, architecture, landscape, everything. So when I discovered they had no historian, I said, well, what about your tour coordinator? You got to have a tour coordinator. No, they didn't. So I decided to go home and use my writing skills, English skills, what have you, and I wrote a 10-page proposal. And the title of it was Why Spring Grove Needs an Historian. And then I asked if I could present that to the board of directors. Actually, I think it was the Heritage Foundation. So I did that, and they pretty much contracted me on the spot to be the first historian. I did that for the first year, and then the second year with Monica Jorg, we started the volunteer docent program.
Okay, I don't want to run out of time to talk about the book. This is the second book. The first one was photographs. This is Stories in the Grove. Quickly, tell us your, and it's not fair to ask your favorite, but tell us a fun story.
They're all my favorite stories. A fun story. Well, you know, since this is Business Watch, I think it would be appropriate to talk about the Drackett family. And I came across the story for the Drackett family when I went to a dinner party with some friends, and sitting across the table from me was this beautiful woman. And when she found out I was writing a book, she said, I have family in Spring Grove. And I said, oh, what's the name? And she said, Drackett. And I'm like, well, it can't be the same Drackett as Windex and Drano and all those products. And it was Ann Thomas, Drackett Thomas. And she said, you know, make sure you talk about Sally Drackett in your book, because the founders of the Drackett Company were Philip and Sally Drackett. And Philip gets all the claim and fame, but Sally was just as much a part of that business as Philip. And she's the one who came up with the Macron symbol over the A in Drano, so that you know it's Drano and not Drano.
Drano.
That was Sally.
That's great. Well, there are so many stories in the book.
115.
115 in the book. You can order it online. Here's a number, here's a website you can go to. Also, you're doing book signings coming up starting next week. Good luck with that, Phil.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being here on the Business Watch.
I love it.
So appreciate it. And Mother's Day, Father's Day is coming up.
You betcha.
Good idea for that.
Thank you.
Peg, we'll send it back to you.
All right, thanks, Kelly and Phil. He needs a longer segment. Well, thank you for joining us this morning for U.S. Bank Business Watch. We'll be back next Sunday and every Sunday morning at 6:30 here on Local 12 and 10 a.m. on the CW. For more business news all week long, please visit the Business Courier online and sign up for daily emails and follow on Twitter and Facebook. The address is CincinnatiBusinessCourier.com. I'm Peg Rasconi. Have a great Sunday and a happy Easter.